It's another Halloween party beer, and this time I gotta make sure I have some kind of crowd pleaser. So what that is and what that's all about is up next. Welcome to Big Monster Brewing, the Anvil Foundry edition. I am Matt, and today I will be making a beer for our annual Halloween party, now social distance party for 2020. And I need to make something that I'm sure everyone's going to like, and we'll get to that in a minute. Before we start, I want to say, if you're new to the channel, please consider hitting that subscribe button and the notification bell as well. And like the video, leave any comments, questions, or anything below. And I think I hit all the marks. I'm not sure. I'm still not all that well-versed in all this. So far, for Halloween, I've made a beer that I wasn't able to share at a big event before the pandemic started. I've made a beer that I've taken the opportunity to dial in my lager method with. So before I get to that final fourth beer, and this is only beer 3, you didn't miss one, but before I get to that, I figured I better make one that would be considered a crowd pleaser, one that I'm reasonably sure most people that are going to be getting these beers for this socially distanced Halloween party is going to like. And that is a hazy IPA. Like it or not, IPA is hugely popular. I'm sure you're no stranger to the amount of IPA that's on the shelves in supermarkets, liquor stores, bottle shops, and how many taps there are at your local breweries. I know in the home brewing world, it kind of now and again gets a little, I don't know what you would say, it gets looked frowned upon, looks down upon, like maybe it's too easy of a style, just make a beer and load it with hops, or maybe it's out there too much. Whatever the argument is, there's no denying it's a very popular beer. So I'm going to make one based after a couple recipes I've had success with before to, again, make sure there's one beer that majority of the party goers will like, unless I screw it up. And I hadn't thought of that until this video where I'm going to be tasting immediately after. That just put me in a weird mood for the rest of this. Anyway, let's get started. We need to talk about what this recipe is and what I'm making. And that, of course, starts with the grain bill or the grist. And that is 71% pale malt, 8% Munich malt, 7% flaked oats, 7% flaked wheat, 3% aromatic malt, and 3% golden naked oats. This grist is largely one I have made before with maybe some slight alterations in those last 2 specialty malts, but by and large, it gives me the color, it adds to the haziness and the mouthfeel that I generally like for my crowd pleaser IPAs. It's really the hops where I'm going to be doing something different. For this brew, I'm brewing 2.5 gallons, and I'm mashing in with the 6.5 gallon Anvil Foundry, and I'm going to boil on propane again. I'm starting with RO water and adding salts to match the yellow dry profile in brewing water. I set the mash temperature pretty low on this one. We're going with 149 degrees, and once that's set, I get the water recirculating to bring this up to temperature as fast as I can. When the water is at temperature, I mash in, then I set up the recirculation plate, and keep the mash recirculating for the next 60 minutes. At this point, I will get the boil additions ready, but I'm not going to need a lot of them right away. For this particular IPA, all of the hops are going to be added post-boil. It's going to be a very large charge of hops at a whirlpool, and then 2 additions of dry hops during fermentation. There's really nothing to add to this boil except for one thing, which I'll get to, so to make more sense of it, I'll go ahead and start laying that out right now. For the whirlpool hops, it is going to be 1 ounce each of Motueka and Mosaic that I am going to whirlpool for 15 minutes at 175 degrees after the 60-minute boil. Then the additional hops, well after brew day, are going to be 0.3 ounce of Cryo Citra and 0.3 ounce of Cryo Mosaic added at 5 days, then that same amount added again at 3 days left in the fermentation. I do have one addition during the boil, and that is yeast nutrients at 10 minutes. We're not adding any whirlfloc because I want to keep this beer hazy. I'm not worried at all about clarity in this style, in this brew. After that 60-minute mash, I lift the malt pipe out and turn off the power. I sparge with a gallon of water that I've heated up to 170 degrees Fahrenheit. Then I transfer the entire sweet wort into my 10-gallon boil kettle. I get the kettle on the propane and wait for the boil to start. And once it does, I wait some more. It's not until 15 minutes left in the boil that I put my Hydra immersion chiller into the boiling wort to sanitize it. And at 10 minutes, I start up the pump to get the whirlpool going to sanitize the pump head and the hoses and add my yeast nutrients. When that 60-minute boil is over, I turn on the cooling pump and keep the whirlpool going and let the wort drop to 175 degrees. Then I add all the hops that I have prepared for brew day and whirlpool at 175 degrees for the next 15 minutes. After the whirlpool, I chill the wort down to 85 degrees, transfer it to a 3-gallon carboy, and then pitch the yeast. I pitch the yeast right away at this high temperature because once again, I am using the Omega yeast Hornell-Kvik strain for this beer. And in just a matter of hours, the yeast are already doing their thing. So after 7 days, the beer is basically done, but I move it to one of my fermentation fridges and drop the temperature to 65 degrees. I don't cold crash it yet. This is the temperature I want for my dry hopping. So once it reaches 65 degrees, I add the first charge of dry hops, which is the Cryo Mosaic and Cryo Citra. Then with 3 days left before I want to cold crash it, I add the same amount with the same hops. And then after 5 days at 65 degrees, I cold crash it, keg it, carbonate it, and can it. So now at this point in the video, if you've been following along, which you apparently have been, if you've made it to this point, you might be asking yourself or asking me through the screen, if I'm only adding hops at a whirlpool and a dry hopping, why the 60-minute boil? Couldn't I just do like a 20-minute boil, 10 minutes of a good boil to make sure everything is sanitized, and then the extra, well, I guess it'd be 25 minutes, 15 minutes of the whirlpool, and then dry hop. Save yourself the almost half hour of boil time, not to mention the amount of time getting everything up and down to temperature. And that's an incredibly valid question. And it's one that kind of occurred to me once all was said and done. So I took a closer look at my recipe sheets. Turns out there was an additional hop supposed to be added that I totally missed. And it was a first wort hop, meaning as soon as I transferred that wort out of the Anvil into the boil kettle and put it on the heat, I was going to add about roughly 20 IBUs of Summit hops. And that was calculated for 75 minutes, 15 minutes for the boil to ramp up and another 60 minutes of the boil. I just somehow completely, entirely missed that. I don't even have a story to tell of how I missed that. In fact, here's these sheets, what I have in my hand, and you can see notes as I went through that day. They were outside with me in the Anvil and the boil kettle. There's no excuse for missing it other than I didn't follow the sheet the way I should. So little tip there to anyone starting out this, if you're going to go through all the trouble of printing out the steps, maybe, actually read them. I'm saying that more to me, not to you. I'm sure you weren't stupid enough to do that, just me. So this is going to be interesting. I'm not sure how this is going to taste with a pretty, I'm not going to say important because I don't know how the beer is. It might not have been an important step. A significant addition, I should say. 75 minutes of a bittering hop that's a huge element to not be in this beer. So let's find out what that did, good or bad, right now, because we're up to tasting. Here we go. It is tasting day for Fog Machine, and I've kind of abandoned the homemade labels, at least for tasting or for all the cans. I still print them out for the video, as you just saw, and for social media posts, but I'm really unhappy with the printer I have doing the labels. I've done them before. Same stickers, label material for bottles for years and never had the ink come off at all. I mean, I could have them sit in buckets of ice and it wouldn't come off. This new printer I got, that printer totally died, and I don't even think you can get ink for it anymore. And the new one I got with the whatever they've changed in the ink just does not hold on when these cans sweat. Forget it. So what I think I'm going to be doing, which is probably a discussion for another video, is kind of get just general labels that are offset printed, so I don't have to worry about it, and then write in what they are, like a crowler, and then do something for these occasions to identify what each beer is. I don't know. We'll maybe talk about that later. But now it's time to crack open a fog machine. In fact, I just realized I haven't told the story. This one's a pretty easy story to figure out. Halloween Horror Nights, if you don't even know what it is, by its name, you can kind of guess it's a giant Halloween event. 10 haunted houses, 5 scare zones shows when it's on. There is no Halloween Horror Nights this year. But when it happens, very Halloween horror inspired theme. And of course, with that comes a ridiculous amount of fog. I don't know what their budget is for fog machines and the liquid that makes the artificial fog, but it has to be one of their larger, I don't even know what we call it, dispensable items. I forget what the term is. I'll remember when I'm editing. Maybe I'll put it on the bottom here. And if I don't, it'll say I didn't remember. So that's the idea. It's supposed to be a hazy IPA, and the haziness conjures up fog, and fog conjures up the fog machines for Halloween Horror Nights. You probably figured it out before I even said that. All right. Oh, my. Quite carbonated. I think I mentioned this before. I've overcarbonated, as you can see. I think you can see without me even tilting it. I've overcarbonated these by about 0.1 or 2 volumes to compensate for the loss of canning, and it's worked out really, really well. I have not really had any undercarbonated beers out of my cans. As you can clearly see from this is not undercarbonated. The glass, apologies for the dots on the glass. I did pull this out of the dishwasher, which means it got hit by some jet dry. I did a hot water rinse on it quick, but it's not filthy. It's just got that jet dry stuff on it. So I tried, but color, that's what I want in the color. The haze could be hazier, but I'll take it. I'd say in person, it looks a little more golden hazy and maybe a touch of orange on the video, but I'll take it. You cannot see through it. That's the point of it. Let's check out the aroma. Getting just nailed right in the nose with strong Citra and Mosaic. Maybe a little bit of the Motueka from the late edition house, but definitely Citra. I find Citra and Galaxy, and Galaxy's not in this, but I find Citra and Galaxy to be a very recognizable aroma hop, and this is Citra plus some stuff. It's probably the Mosaic because that was the double dry hop, and maybe a little bit of the Motueka in the end. But aroma, that's what you expect from an IPA. It is all hop, no malt, no yeast. It's just hop. Let's get to the flavor here. It is, well, first off, hop forward like you'd expect. I was afraid it's going to be a little sweet without that bittering hop, and it's, no, I don't think it is sweet at all, actually. Let me take another taste. Yeah, I don't think that missing that Summit hop I want to put in really damaged it as far as the bittering goes. But what's interesting is that there is a large amount of fruit flavors coming out that I think has a lot to do with the Quebec yeast that may have been hidden if I'd put that bittering charge in. So let me see if I can identify exactly what we're tasting here. There's some citrusy notes to it, which you would expect with the hops that we used. It's more of a orange rind, not quite pith only, but like the rind, the zest and the pith. So there is a bitterness there that comes from kind of a fruity pith. There's another one in there. There's another flavor in there. I can't quite. I think it's almost like a barely ripe peach, like not an unripe peach, but one that's like, if you had let it go for another week or two, it would have been perfect. I think that's what I'm getting is like an underripe fruit, but not in an unpleasant way. Like almost the fruit's there, but it's not as strong as it could be. I am, unfortunately, I think. Let me try again. I might be getting a little bit of grassiness, and that That actually might be an adverse effect of not having the bittering hop in there. That might be the cryo hops. Although cryo hops would be mostly lupulins. Wouldn't be, that was tough to say. Not so much the vegetal matter. So maybe not. Maybe that's not a grassiness. I was thinking maybe the bitterness hops, or the bittering hops, were not offsetting the dry hops. But that's chemical I was gonna say chemically or logically, on the surface doesn't seem like it would be the problem. But let's take another taste. Maybe that's not what I'm tasting. Yeah, I'm kind of talking myself out of that. It's more, I think it's more that fruitiness. Seems to be changing as I drink it, which makes sense for an IPA. Your palate adjusts and it changes. But all in all, the goal was to make a crowd pleaser. I think maybe. I don't know. It's a little different. It took a bit of a chance with that Quebec yeast, and I'm getting that really a lot of more complexity that isn't hop related that I wasn't expecting. This is going to take some more tastings to kind of figure out exactly what's happening in here. So maybe not your atypical IPA, but I think it's one that's going to be, we might be talking about the people involved in this party, because this is an unexpected surprise, and I can't tell you if it's good or bad. I don't think it's bad per se as a bad beer, but I think would I make this again like this, or would I take what this is and do something with it? I don't know the answer to that. I really don't. I'm going to taste one more time and try to think about this a little more. I'm not sure how I feel about this. It's not bad as in taste bad at all. There's nothing, there's no kind of, let me get that. The taste, whatever I'm tasting, is not infection related. It's not process related. It is the combination and the omission of one ingredient. And, well, obviously, I don't hate it. I mean, that is almost gone. But do I love it? I don't know. And honestly, you probably don't want to stick around for me to find out, because it's going to take more than this. So this was not what I expected. I thought it was going to be a straightforward hazy hop bomb for just to make sure everyone has something they like. It's not, but I don't know what it is. So maybe we'll hear more about this after the party, or maybe even have some people on during said party. The party's going to extend over, that sounded weird. I was going to say extend over days and maybe even weeks. Not consecutively. It's people as they taste the beers. It's going to take time. So it's going to be small moments of time over the course of weeks. And maybe I'll get some input and figure out what's going on. But this has been interesting. The tasting of this has been pretty unexpected. So instead of me just repeating myself 100 times, let me say thank you for watching. I'll be back again soon with the last Halloween beer, and then probably start delving into some off-seasonal styles as we get ready for Christmas. And I'll do at least one Christmas beer that I have in mind. Maybe some more fun stuff. But until then, let me say one more time, thank you for listening. And I'll see you in the next episode, maybe with some more answers.